For months, Polish-Canadian pastor Artur Pawlowski, his family, and his congregation at the Fortress of Adullam Church and the Street Church in Calgary, Alberta, have been accosted, fined, and harassed by government bureaucrats and police. And on Saturday, May 8th, the COVID-crazed cops not only attacked them again, they literally arrested Artur and his brother David in the middle of a busy, rainy street, offering the world the unforgettable image of peaceful, well-dressed men of God being thrown to their knees and handcuffed by jackbooted, armor-vested, gun-toting, social distance breaching, tax-consuming cops. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC TV. You know, shortly after Calgary cops arrested Pastor Artur Pawlowski and his brother David, fellow pastor Henry Hildebrandt tweeted a picture of Artur on his knees and wrote, quote, "Earlier this afternoon, my fellow pastor Artur Pawlowski was arrested in Calgary for the crime of holding a church service, as he does every Saturday morning. Are you awake yet?" And Ezra Levant and the team at Rebel News provided video. On Twitter, Ezra said, quote, "A heavily armed SWAT team just took down a Christian pastor heading home from church. Police say he's charged with, quote, inciting, end quote, people to go to church. This is the second pastor jailed this year. We're crowdfunding his lawyers at http://saveartur.com, end quote." And if that last portion of Ezra's tweet recalls some important memories, it definitely should. Because Pastor Pawlowski's year-long fight against the crackdown cops, a fight that saw him fined and arrested numerous times simply for feeding the homeless in Calgary.
This is not your picnic in the neighborhood for the fun of it. We are providing necessities of life to those that you and your bosses refuse to provide.
That was what inspired Levant and Rebel News to start their Fight the Fines charitable site so that people could donate to help pay the towering legal fees of folks worldwide who've been harassed, fined, and arrested for engaging in voluntary association or news reporting contrary to government COVID commands. MRC TV readers might recall my coverage of Pawlowski's courageous stand for liberty a few weeks ago. That was when armed police and a COVID-crazed bureaucrat interrupted his service, and he powerfully told them to leave.
Get out of this property immediately. Out. I don't want to hear anything. Out of this property immediately. I don't want to hear a word. Out. Out! Out of this property immediately until you come back with a warrant. Out!
Correctly citing their actions as reminiscent of the Nazi Gestapo and the Soviet communist police state he left behind decades ago.
Out of this property, you Nazis! Out! Out! Gestapo is not allowed here. Immediately, Gestapo is not allowed! And don't come back without the warrant. Out, Nazi! Out! Out! You understand? Nazis are not welcome here. Out!
Now, since the time of that first invasion, the cops have continued to harass him and his congregation, while the faithful have continued to resist, to recognize the authority of God over the authority of the men who claim power, and to recognize the logical, historical, and ethical primacy of voluntary association. The godless state would not be deterred, however, and at the end of April, intrepid reporters discovered that the Alberta Judicial Branch issued a warrant for the pastor's arrest, wrote Trey Goins Phillips of faithwire.com, quote, "Through a quietly signed warrant, Court of Queen's Bench Justice David Gates authorized police and health officials in Alberta to, quote, use such reasonable force as they deem appropriate to gain access, end quote, to the building belonging to the Fortress of Adullam Church in Calgary, led by Pastor Artur Pawlowski, end quote. And as befits a police state, Quote, the warrant furthermore forbids the pastor or anyone else operating on his behalf from interfering with officials should they attempt to gain access to the church or to try to reach Pawlowski. If anyone tries to impede their actions, the judge has permitted law enforcement officers to do anything necessary to detain and arrest Pawlowski. With that threat hanging over him, Artur took his place at church Saturday and defied the government, offering his sermon and witnessing the congregation reject the armed cops who tried once more to interrupt. Tweeted Rebel News reporter Adam Seuss at 1:05 p.m. Saturday. Artur Pawlowski's supporters have ejected Calgary police from the church. We expect they will return in force. And they did, expanding the number of armed invaders far beyond the original 10, pushing Artur and his brother to the tarmac, cuffing them and dragging them away like slabs of butchered meat. For context, let us recall that Artur and David escaped communist Poland, where the Soviets tried to stamp out Christianity, where the collectivists running the state claimed that there was to be no voluntary interaction unless the government permitted it. In that and other communist collectivist nations, there was to be no worship of God because, of course, the worship of God, particularly through Christianity and Judaism, requires free will and recognizes an authority and natural order superior to man's threats and creations. That being, of course, embodied by the state. Hence, as I noted when writing and shooting the free MRC learning series College Unbound, Chinese communists break into private dwellings. Even now, they break up unlawful religious meetings. And one of our guests, broadcaster David Knight, recalled his own experience when his family adopted a young girl from China.
I could tell when we got into Hong Kong. You know how I could tell? We started seeing crosses. And for the first time, I just realized, for the last 2 weeks, we haven't seen any churches or any crosses.
In College Unbound, episode 10, Knight adds,
there's a very big church, but it's underground in China. A very big church. Probably a lot more Christians in China than there are in America, and they're probably a lot more hardcore because they're serious about it. They're not playing church. They're not just going there for, it's not a country club situation because there's real stakes involved there.
Artur and David Pawlowski saw the stakes in Poland as well. And now collectivism is attacking freedom and free association, free worship, and God again, this time in Canada, the place to which they fled to escape tyranny. That would be the place where, as state-subsidized news network, the CBC, blithely reported, quote, on Saturday, Artur and David Pawlowski were charged with organizing an illegal in-person gathering, inciting or inviting others to attend an illegal gathering, as well as promoting and attending the gathering. Review that statement and see if any of it comports with a free society. As I often stress, an invitation to gather in any private place for any voluntary activity is, by definition, not an aggressive or violent act. It violates no one's rights and allows for free will to assess risk and benefit. And it allows people to accept or reject the invitation. It's the state which is involuntary, the state which forces people to pay, which forces people to fund its vaunted construction projects to make public buildings and fund gun-toting police and all their politicians who tell them what to do. It's the state which redefines what is private property and then calls it public, if neighbors or friends or worshipers or customers actually enter the private place. But only that which is actually supported through tax cash is public property. And it is that realm, the one run by the government and politicians, which forces people to pay for it and associate with each other in direct and indirect ways that cause conflict. These lessons have to be learned. Pastor Pawlowski and his brother suffer right now at the hands of a government that counts on the populace not learning these lessons. As a man called Dominic wrote about the shocking move by the Calgary police Saturday on Twitter, quote, "How can anyone tell me that Canada is a free country when the government can yell pandemic and justify shutting down your livelihood, place of worship, and restrict your mobility while using the full force of police to terrorize you into suppression?" Amen. Hey, thank you very much for watching, everybody. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, just double check that you are subscribed. Please hit the like button and join us at Rumble, where all the videos are housed. I'm really happy that all the videos are over there. You can, of course, find us all the time at MRCTV.org. That's MRCTV.org. You can find us on TikTok, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram as well. And yeah, as a reminder, I do want to mention, I mentioned the series a couple times here. College Unbound, all 11 episodes. I got to write and shoot it, and the team did a fantastic job putting all the visuals together. It's all about collectivism and how poisonous it is. It's great stuff. You can pause it, check it out, take notes, and tell friends. Thanks so much, everybody. For MRC TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.